Happy Tuesday, Kings and Queens. It is Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. Once again, we're jumping into a brand new lesson, Math 7 Unit 2, Lesson 1b. Our classroom norms, as usual, are that your cameras are to be on, your mics are muted, and that you guys are ready to learn. Your materials for today are that you're going to need your Math 7 Spiral Notebook, your pencil, and your student companion. So let's jump right into today's lesson so that we can keep going. So today we're going to talk about operations with rational numbers once again, and we're in day 2 of interpreting negative numbers. So our standard for today is 7.ns.1, and our objectives are that students will interpret sign numbers in the context of temperatures and elevation. We're also going to order rational numbers and justify the comparisons. And we're going to plot points on a vertical or horizontal number line to represent rational numbers. And our mathematical practices for today are MP2 and MP7. And we are going to reason abstractly and quantitatively and look for and make use of structure. As always, we want to make sure that we're ready to take notes and work collaboratively. Of course, we want to make sure that the standard and objectives get into your notes. So we're going to pause the video here so that you guys have an opportunity to put them into your notes. So we'll pause here for about 30 seconds so you can finish copying this down. All right, so let's jump right into our engagement activity. Our engagement activity can be found in your student companion. We have 2 questions, number 1 and number 2, and it says, which city was colder, and to explain your reasoning. Now, this is question number 2, so please make sure that you can answer question number 2. And we want to know, is it colder in Copenhagen or in Oslo? We'll take 30 seconds. And I want you guys to put in the chat which city is colder, and then we will explain our reasoning. Okay, so the answer is that it was colder in Oslo because -12 is technically less than -5. Remember, on a number line, the larger the number is when it's negative, it's actually smaller. So once again, it was colder in Oslo because -12 is less than -5. Now let's go back to number 1. Again, we're making sure that we're tracking these answers into our student companions that can be found in Google Classroom. So it says complete each statement with a number that makes the statement true. So we'll give you about 30 seconds and you can choose any numbers that will make any of these statements true. So for instance, for part A, we want to choose any number that's going to be less than 7 degrees Celsius. Okay. And you can use that thermometer on the right-hand side to help you as a guide. When you get to number or letter C, we want to figure out a number that's going to be between negative zero point 0.8 or 0 and 8 tenths and in between negative 0 and 1 tenth. Okay, so we'll give you about 1 minute to complete number 1, and then we'll come back together to work collectively. All right, beautiful people. So let me give you some examples of what I came up with. For letter choice A, I chose that 5 degrees Celsius is less than 7 degrees Celsius because we know 5 is less than 7. So that's a good number to choose. Of course, your answers may vary, but I chose 5. For letter choice B, I want a number that's less than -3, and I chose -8 because -8 is less than -3 degrees Celsius. For letter choice C, when I'm looking for a number between negative zero point 0.8 and negative zero point 0.1, again, it might help if you draw a number line. I chose negative zero point 0.7. Any number in between there will work, like negative zero point 0.7, negative zero point 0.6, negative zero point 0.5, negative zero point 0.4, negative zero point 0.3, negative zero point 0.2. Any of those options were correct for letter choice C. And then last but not least, letter choice D, I want a number that's greater than 2 degrees Celsius, and I chose 4. 4 degrees Celsius is greater than 2 degrees Celsius. So let's jump to our goals for today. The first thing that we want to be able to do today is to compare rational numbers. And we also want to be able to use rational numbers to describe temperature and elevation. Okay. So next, we're going to jump into our elaboration activity, which can be found in your student companion. And our elaboration activity is going to be entitled Elevation. And once again, we're completing the work in your student companion. So if you look in your student companion, the first thing that you should see is a question that says, what is the elevation of the fish? What is the elevation of the fish? Okay, and then the second question that you should see is what is the elevation of the seabird? So let's take 2 minutes and based off of this chart that's here and it's also in your student companion, this graph, I want you to answer questions number 1 and 2, and then we'll come back together to share. All right, so let's talk about our answers. So for both of these, we're going to have to estimate a little bit because they're not exactly on the lines that are given to us. If I look at my graph, I should notice that we're counting in increments of 25. So we start at 0 in the middle, and we either go up to 25, the next line will be 50, and then if I look below it, I'm starting at 0, I'm going down to negative 25 and negative 50. Now, starting with the fish, where it says, what is the elevation of the fish? Again, we're capturing this in our student companion. Our fish isn't exactly at negative 50, so we have to kind of take a guess. So my guess would be that the elevation of the fish would be at negative 48 meters. So if you had anything between like 46 to 50, that would be considered correct. But my guess would be negative 48. And then when I look at the elevation of the seabird, I have to look that it's not exactly at 25. So my guess would be that it's at 23 meters. So if you had anything from 22 to 25, that would be considered correct. But my estimation is that the elevation of the seabird is 23 meters. So once again, for number 1, I had negative 48. And for number 2, I had 23. Okay. Let's keep moving. So it says, which animal has the greatest magnitude? And it's so hopefully you realize that the bird has the greatest magnitude. And it says, if the bird is directly above the fish, use academic vocabulary to describe the distance. Okay. So again, these lines should kind of help you determine where they are on your graph. And the answer for number 3 in our student companion, where it says, if the bird is directly above the fish, use academic vocabulary to describe the distance. Well, we know the distance between the bird and the fish is going to be 71 meters because yesterday we talked about the absolute value. So the absolute value of negative 48 is 48 away from 0. So that was where the fish was. And the absolute value of 23 is 23 away from 0. And if we add those two distances together from 0, so the bird was 23 away from 0, the fish was 48 away from 0. If we add those together, we would get a total of 71. So that's the distance between the two, and we found that using the absolute value. So once again, just to recap how we got that, my bird, we said, was at an elevation of 23. It was 23 units away from 0. That's my absolute value. The fish was at negative 48, but absolute values are always positive. So it was 48 units away from 0. So if I add the 48 units away from 0 and 23 units away from 0, the distance between the bird and the fish is 71 meters. Okay. Let's keep moving to our next portion of our elaboration activity, and we're going to move to number 4. So number 4 says a heron is perched in a tree 50 feet above sea level. Directly below the heron, a pelican is flying 7 feet above sea level, 17 feet above sea level, and directly below the birds is a trout, which is a fish, swimming 23 feet below sea level. So the first thing that I want you guys to do is to annotate this problem in your student companion by underlining the important numerical quantities and units. So I want you and your student companion to annotate this problem, and I want you to underline whatever important numbers and quantities that you see. In order to do this, you should be able to just highlight the text and underline what you believe is important. Now, I would like for one of you guys to unmute yourselves and just share out what things you underlined, what numerical quantities and units did you say were important for us to underline. So we'll pause here for you guys to tell us what you underlined. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. And now let's go to the next part of the question. So it says select all of the true statements. So you should be able to do this by clicking on the image and select edit in your student companion, and you can type in X for all of the true statements to do so. Okay. So I want to remind you that you can create a visual, you can do a vertical number line in order to solve this problem. So I'm going to give you guys about 1 minute to select which ones you believe are correct. Okay, so just to remember, this says select all true statements, meaning there's probably more than one answer. So the first answer that was correct was letter choice A, which says the difference in height between the pelican and the heron is negative 33 feet. Your second answer choice that was correct was letter choice E, which says the difference in height between the pelican and the trout is 40 feet. And letter choice F was also correct, where it says the distance between the heights of the pelican and the trout is 40 feet. So your answers were letter choice A, E, and F. So let's talk a little bit. It says, what were your strategies for finding the distance and the height between the pelican and the heron? And what were your strategies for finding the distance and the height for between the pelican and the trout? And I'm going to ask one of you or one or two of you just to go ahead and answer this question. And you guys can go ahead and unmute yourself for this portion. All right. So now we're going to practice on a number line. And if you look at number 5 in your student companion, you'll see that it says click on the number line and click edit. And we're going to put the numbers in order of their distance from 0 on the number line. So once again, number 1 says put these numbers in order of their distance on the number line, starting with the smallest distance. So we have negative 12.7 or negative 12 and 7 tenths. We have negative 9 halves, 2 over 100, 7, 11 and 1/4, and 41 over 2. So we want to be able to put these numbers appropriately on the number line. So let's make sure that we capture these correctly. And then number 2 says to find the values of the absolute value of negative 12.7 and the absolute value of 11 and 1/4. So I'm going to give you guys about 3 minutes to do both of these questions, number 5 and number 6, in your student companions. Remember to put them on the number line. You're going to click on the image and click edit, and then you're just going to give the answers for number 6. So let's pause here so you can answer these questions. All right. So I'm going to look at each one of your number lines for number one. And the answer for letter choice B is that we're going to find the values of the absolute value of negative 12.7. That is equal to 12.7. Remember, we just make the number positive. And the absolute value of 11 and 1/4 is 11 and 1/4. So again, the answer is 12.7 and 11 and 1/4. So let's just talk about some questions to think about and chat. What were some of your strategies when you were sorting the rational numbers on the number line? Which numbers were the most challenging to order and why? And how did you decide where to put the fractions? Anybody can volunteer and answer these questions, any of the questions you want to answer. Let's just pause here and I want you guys to just share out your thoughts and we'll capture them for the future. So just answer any of the questions that you want to. At this time, we'll pause the video here and you can unmute yourselves and answer any of the three questions. Beautiful. Now let's move to our last question, number 7, that's in the student companion. And we need to explain our reasoning. And it says Karen says that 11 and 1/4 is less than negative 12.7. Do you agree with Karen? And explain or show your reasoning. So let's take about 1 minute, and I want you guys in your student companion to say whether or not you agree with Karen's statement that says 11 and 1/4, which is also 11.25 in decimal form, is less than negative 12.7. Say whether or not you agree and explain why you agree or disagree. We'll pause the video here for about 1 minute so you guys can answer this question. All right. So the answer to this is no. We do not agree with Karen's statement. For instance, you could have shown a number line ordering negative 12.7 and 11. Or remember, negative numbers with a small magnitude are greater than negative numbers with a large magnitude. But in this case, 11 and 1/4 is positive. So a positive number will never be smaller than a negative number. So let's just recap and think about what were some key things that we had to answer for today. The first thing that we talked about is when you have a negative number, a negative and a positive integer, how do you determine which is greater? Okay. Well, when you have a negative and a positive integer, the magnitude of a number determines which integer is greater. So the magnitude determines which is greater. What is the distance from zero? Well, we know that the absolute value is the distance from zero. We talked about that yesterday. And last but not least, how do you find the distance between two numbers on a number line? Well, we can find the absolute value from both numbers to zero, and then we can add them together to find the magnitude. So we can find the distance from zero, which is the absolute value, for both numbers, add them together, and that'll give us the magnitude. So here is our vocabulary word wall for today. Again, we have a horizontal and vertical number lines to represent sea levels and values increasing. We've also talked about what absolute value means and how to order numbers on a number line. So your evaluation activity for today, what you are going to do on your own, is going to be called sorting temperatures. This is on the student companion. You have three questions, which I'll give you 3 minutes to answer. For the first one, you're going to click on the number line and click edit to put them in order from least to greatest. And then you're going to answer questions number 2 and 3. So we'll pause the video here for 3 minutes for you guys to answer questions 1, 2, 3 in your student companion, and then you're going to submit it so that it's submitted in Google Classroom. Once again, we'll pause here and give you 3 minutes to answer questions 1, 2, and 3. All right. Thank you guys so much for pausing and answering those questions and submitting your student companion in Google Classroom. Your goals for today were that we wanted to be able to compare rational numbers and also use rational numbers to describe temperature and elevation. So, we've already recapped our lesson for today, and your independent activities for Tuesday and Wednesday are as follows. Today, you will have a Mobius math assignment that is due at 11:59 p.m. It'll be found in Google Classroom. And then Wednesday, you have a Big Ideas workbook assignment that is going to be due tomorrow at 11:59. Remember, Wednesdays is our small group days. So again, you only have Tuesday and Wednesday assignment. So you have one assignment due tonight, which is Mobius Math. The assignment that's due tomorrow is your Big Ideas workbook. If you complete both of them today, then you'll be done for Tuesday and Wednesday, and we'll see you bright and early on Thursday for Thursday's class sessions. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember that this is a brand new quarter, which means that your grades start over. So you want to make sure that you are submitting all of your assignments. If you do not submit assignments, you will be getting zeros for the work, which is important because you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and getting good grades. So again, you have two assignments for the next 2 days that can be found in Google Classroom. If you have any questions, please be sure to email myself or Mr. Spencer. Have a great rest of your day.